Hello, and welcome to episode 54 of Cook Along Live. Today, we are going to be making a Cobb salad from scratch. Now, traditionally, Cobb salads are made with kind of roasted chicken breast, but if you got something else, you got chicken thighs, you got chicken drumsticks, it's fine as long as you get the chicken. That's kind of the main ingredient, one of the main ingredients, I should say. Chicken, eggs, a little bit of bacon. No Canadian bacon, no sliced ham in this one. That would be not a Cobb salad, but the other salad. I can't remember the name of it right now. Chopped salad. Um, but this is kind of what you want to start off with. We're going to be roasting kind of half of a whole chicken today, just because traditionally you want it to be either roasted or grilled. If you have a grill, go ahead and fire it up. I'm just going to be doing a roast. Works a little bit easier for me. So getting started, I'm going to go ahead and get the my oven going at as hot as it will go. Mine's 480 convection, so go ahead and get yours up to whatever it will go up to, and just be right back in 1 second here and get that going. We're going to turn that down once we have everything kind of on the way. And while we're waiting on that to reheat, or heat up, I should say, we're going to go ahead and start getting our chicken prepared. So if you've got a whole chicken, awesome. This is what we're going to be starting with. We're going to break this down so that we just have the crown of the chicken. If you've seen the Thanksgiving special, you will kind of know what we're going to be going for here. We're just going to have the breasts separated from everything else, and we're going to get those roasting separately. We can reserve the thighs and everything else for cooking something else later down the line, later this week. But we're going to get started with kind of butchering down our bird and getting it ready to roast. So the first thing I like to do is kind of get rid of the chicken wings. And I'm going to try and keep just my left hand touching the chicken with my right hand touching the knife. That way I have like a clean hand and a dirty hand, or, you know, like a chickeny hand. That way if I need to grab something without worrying about contaminating it with chicken, I know that my right hand should be more or less clean. So what I'm going to do is remove the drumsticks, or the wings, the drumsticks. I'm going to remove the wings by finding the joint here. You'll notice that there is a nice little, very easy to find joint. I'm going to take my knife, and I'm actually going to just go right through the skin here and cut that so that I get a little bit more range of motion with this joint. I'm going to straighten it all the way out and move the chicken a little bit away. And I'm just going to kind of try and find where the actual ball is and just kind of make a little incision in there. You should be able to see where the ball joint meets the kind of elbow of the chicken. And if you bend it backwards, you can pop it right out and then cut right in between the joint, and you've got one wing removed. Now we'll trim this up later. Right now I'm just trying to get this guy ready for the oven. So I'm going to move him, turn him around the other way. Do the exact same thing on this side. I'm going to come up, just kind of trim the skin down until I can get the wing nice and straight. Try and figure out where the actual joint is. Make a small incision until I can actually see where it is, and just bend it back. And you should be able to kind of pop it out of the socket, and then just make a nice quick incision through there. So we've got two wings separated. Now we're going to remove the kind of wing tips in a bit, but for now we're just getting started with that. Next thing what we want to do, we want to remove this breast piece, the kind of crown is what they call it, of the chicken from the thighs and the drumsticks down here. We also want to keep as much of this skin on it as we can. What the skin does is kind of keeps it from burning when we put it into the oven, and so we want to keep it more or less covering all of the meat. The way that you do that is you actually kind of start with the drumstick, and you kind of pull the skin taut towards the kind of little crevice down here underneath the chicken breast. So kind of pull that as taut as you can get it. And then what you're going to do is take your knife and right along the drumstick, cut down kind of into that crevice, just along the drumstick, like so. Try and get your cut as close to the drumstick as you can, and you'll notice that the skin will be cut and overlaying the breast meat almost all the way. If you do it really, really well, you should have a nice kind of blanket of chicken skin there. We're going to come and just continue to cut up along the chicken thigh up to the carcass. If you have any extra fat, feel free to just kind of trim it away. Again, removing as little of the skin from the crown as possible. And then we're going to do kind of the same thing here as what we did with the drumsticks. There's a joint coming up the actual drumstick here to where it meets the thigh, kind of its knee, I guess, if you will. And then if you kind of follow, there's a bone that goes right into another socket right up here in the carcass. We're going to trim meat away until we get to that bone. So you see what I'm doing here is just as close to this kind of tail as I can, trimming the meat away. And then I'm going to kind of pull the leg out a little bit, and then up along its back, do the same thing. Trim as much of the meat away as I can, and you're going to feel where that bone is for your thigh. Now what you can do is turn your chicken around, and there's definitely going to be an area here where you can kind of pop it out. And then again, we're going to cut some of this skin back as close to, again, the thigh and the leg as we can. My oven is preheated, which is great. And then just make sure that we're cutting the meat down until we get to the bone. Now once we get down to the bone here, you're going to see that joint in there again. So very similar to kind of the wing, you're going to be able to take this and just kind of put one finger on the back of the chicken and then just use your thumb to kind of pop it out of the socket if you can. If not, just try and kind of very gently cut around it with your knife. And you should still be able to separate your thigh and drumstick from the chicken. Now, why are we doing this as opposed to just roasting the whole chicken? Honestly, you could roast the whole chicken, although that's going to take you about 1 hour and 20 minutes if you're roasting the whole bird, because there's a lot of meat here, and all that meat has to come up to temperature. That's a lot of work to put into, a lot of time, I should say, to put into for a Cobb salad. I like to, I mean, obviously we're going a little bit over here anyway and doing something that takes a little bit more time for a Cobb salad. Obviously, you could just grab one of those $5 roasted chickens from Costco or Safeway. Those won't taste as good, guarantee it. Usually they're dry and lacking in the flavor department. This way, you can get the best of kind of both worlds, awesome roast chicken and delicious Cobb salad. But by separating the breast from the chicken, we are able to roast it in a lot less time, about 45 minutes to 50 minutes, depending on how well done you like your chicken. We're going to do the same thing over on this side as we did on the other side, and cut the meat till we get to that bone. See if we can kind of pop it out of its socket. If we can, just run the knife right underneath it. And of course, I'm going a little bit slower right now than I normally would, just so that I can show you guys how to do this. But there we go. We've got actually a butchered chicken here. And then we're going to remove the breast from the actual backbone area. So we've got 2 thighs with the 2 drumsticks attached, 2 wings still with the tips attached. We're going to come up to our breast, and there's kind of a little flap of skin or meat right here in between where the bottom of the rib cage is and the rest of kind of the chicken. So what we're going to do is take our knife and go right underneath that bottom rib bone and just cut up through the skin. And what that's going to do is start removing the chicken breast from the carcass. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm just going to cut down on that other side. Now you're going to see what this allows you to do. This is kind of the gross part. You're able to kind of come over here, take the chicken, and just kind of bend it backward to separate the backbone from the crown or the chest cavity. So we're going to come right in through here, right where it kind of snapped, and just separate that from our chicken. Now the great thing about having this piece, or actually any of these pieces, I can use this for stock. So I'm actually going to take this and freeze it so that when I want to make some chicken stock, I've got parts that I can use. I'm going to do the same thing with some of the wingtips and things like that, because all of these go into an awesome stock. And now we're left with our chicken crown which will cook separately, cook a lot faster this way, and we have all of this to make other chicken dishes during the week. Anything else that we're kind of thinking about maybe making. I'm gonna go ahead and set my knife down over here, and I'm gonna get these guys kind of cleaned up. Grab a plate and set them aside. There we go. 2 thighs and drumsticks, 2 wings. Just gonna set these aside for now. I'll get them in the fridge a little later. And then this kind of backbone, like bottom saddle of the chicken, we're also gonna set that aside. We'll freeze that for stock. So now I've gotten an awesome chicken crown, and if you cut it the right way, your skin should come pretty much all the way down to the bottom rib piece, like right underneath the bottom of his chest cavity. And that's going to keep all of the chicken meat, the breast meat, nice and moist. So the next step is to season this bad boy. And I'm actually going to move this to my tray. Going to get this cutting board out of the way for now. We're bringing that back when we're working with our bacon. And there we go. So I like to actually season this right on the tray that we're going to be roasting it on, because then it catches any of the extra salt or pepper that kind of falls off, and you can move the chicken around to kind of make sure that all of that sticks, gets connected, and then sticks to the chicken. So I get some of that stuff off. I still got my dirty hands, still got my clean hands. So what I'm going to do now is really just grab a little bit of olive oil, regular olive oil, or something that's got a high smoke point like peanut oil. You don't need very much of it. We're just going to add just a touch, maybe a teaspoon or so, and just kind of rub it along the outside. Now, if you're using any other parts of the chickens, if you're using thighs, or if you've got boneless, skinless chicken breast or whatever, this is the part where you're going to start doing the same thing I do. Just getting some of this oil on the outside of the chicken skin or the chicken meat, if that's what you're using. If you're using chicken meat, you probably don't need to use the oil as much, but you do want a nice kind of sticky surface so that it holds on to the seasoning that we're going to be adding. You might hear my dog in the background. He heard a noise, and that means that he's got to start growling at everything. So once we've got a nice kind of coating of oil on the outside, again, I'm not using a lot, just about a teaspoon, and it'll go a long way. Get that off to the side. I'm going to grab my seasoning. In this case, we're just going to start with some kosher salt. And I'm going to season the entire outside of the chicken, even the parts I'm not going to use, because the meat is going to absorb all of this seasoning. And you'll just get a nice, more even flavor. Otherwise, you might get some spots that are more salty than others. So we want a nice, even seasoning, even on the inside, because again, it's going to kind of get pulled in through the rest of the meat while it's cooking. And don't be afraid to be fairly generous with your seasoning here. It does have to go through the skin, so we'll take a little bit extra to get a good amount of flavor here. You definitely want it sticking to the outside of your chicken, though. If you need to add a little bit more oil, go ahead. But don't add too much. You don't want your chicken to be like wet with oil. You just want a nice sheen. Nice glossy exterior. Just enough so that your salt and pepper adhere to the outside. There we go. Just a little bit more right down in here. And perfect. I'm going to go ahead and stretch my skin kind of over and down. Now, I'm going to really quickly grab a paper towel. And we're going to get some pepper on this guy. And again, be fairly generous with the pepper. Some other things you can add if you like are paprika, chili powder, if that's something that you like, a little bit of spice to your chicken. Go ahead and get that going. And we're going to get some pepper on all of the outsides. Go ahead and roll your chicken around on the little tray here. Pick up all of those little bits that kind of fall down. And those should mostly stick to your chicken as well. There we go. It's rolled over that way. Oops. Took off the little adjustment screw on the top there. Yikes. Always fun when stuff like that happens. And we'll go ahead and put this back down onto our tray. Oh, there's that. Perfect. So we got our chicken, nice and seasoned. Got a pretty good dusting of seasoning. The camera's actually not picking up how seasoned mine is, but really, it's just up to you. However much seasoning you feel like you want on your chicken, go for it. The next thing that we're going to do on this particular chicken, just to add a little bit more aroma, like aromatic flavor, I'm going to grab a couple of garlic cloves here. And what I'm going to do with these is actually just kind of give them a nice little love tap to smash them. Not going to worry too much about the skin. If you have a ton of skin and it just kind of peels off, fine. Go ahead and separate it and get it in the garbage. But really what I want to do is just kind of get these broken up. We're not gonna macerate them or, you know, pound them into oblivion or anything, but we do want to break them, kind of crack them, so we get that nice garlic kind of flavor coming out or aroma coming out. And we're going to pile these guys under the chicken so that they kind of roast and steam as the chicken roasts in the oven. This adds a nice subtle garlic flavor to everything. If you're using thighs or any other kind of meat, you can just lay these underneath your meat on the roasting pan, and it should work just about the same. So I'm quite literally just going to grab these guys. Got a nice little pile here. Going to kind of tilt my chicken up. Set these guys down underneath in the cavity. Like so. And then I'm just going to pick up the top of the chicken and lay it down. And then the bottom part here, again, the skin, I'm going to kind of try and get that rolled underneath the chicken itself so that I've got a nice kind of, it's not really tight, but it's a nice package. It's almost forming like a little parcel here, which is kind of fun. Hey Pete, how's it going, man? This will actually cut the roasting time in about almost in half, especially the way that we're going to be doing it. So rather than cooking all of the breast meat and having to cook all of the thigh meat and getting the thigh meat up to 165 or whatever it needs to be fully cooked, we can actually get the breast meat in there, cook it 40 to 50 minutes. Just kind of depends on how much you want your chicken roasted. And it should be all the way cooked. And unless you're using like a giant bird, that should be plenty of time versus like an hour and 25 minutes, which is usually what it takes for a larger bird or a full bird. So you're going to be cutting a pretty significant amount of time off of the chicken roasting here. Plus, this is a great way to just kind of do breasts and serve chicken breasts and then leave the thighs separate. Or if you want to cook them both at the same time, it's a great way to allow you to pull the breast out once it's done cooking and not overcook this while you let the thighs and the drumsticks cook all the way through. I do this a lot of times with Thanksgiving turkey as well. Just works a lot nicer for me. Yum, Drake, that works perfect. Yep, garlic powder and chili powder works wonderfully as well. So we've got our chicken kind of ready. This is perfect. We're going to go ahead. I'm going to toss it into my oven. I'll be right back. And we'll get this roasting for about, I'm going to say 20 minutes at our 480 or 500 or whatever your oven goes up to degrees. So I'm going to turn my timer down to 50 and I'll keep an eye on that. Give me 2 seconds to wash off my hands. I do have the sink cam set up this week, but when I tried switching to it, it didn't seem to want to show me any video. So it might take a second to troubleshoot now that I've got my chicken going. But excuse me for going off frame for a second. All right, so we've got our dirty cutting board, which is over kind of sitting on the sink. Everything else here should be clean because we didn't let chicken touch any of it. So very, very low chance for cross-contamination. I do have some seasoning on the cutting board, which I'm just going to kind of dust off, but none of it has touched the chicken. It was getting it out of the salt caddy and moving it over towards the chicken to dust it. So there we go. All right. Next step, next thing that I like to start with is actually my eggs. So we're going to go ahead and for this recipe, we're going to do anywhere between 2 and 4 eggs. I know in the actual ingredients list I said 2. If you're cooking for more people, if you have 4, like a full family, go ahead and cook 4 eggs. And what I'm going to do, take my pot, I'm going to get my eggs into the pot in a cold pot. And I'm just going to do 2 myself. You know what? I'll do 4 because then I can have breakfast tomorrow. Thinking ahead. There we go. And what I'm going to do is, let me see if I can troubleshoot the sync cam real quick. Let's do that. And where is my properties here? View, properties. Why are you not doing that? It is working. I am getting video signal. And let's do this. We'll switch to you, and then we'll switch back and see if that works. There we go. That did work. So let me go and unlock you. Oops, that's not what I want. Scale to window. I want you to be transform fit to screen. There we go. All right, so now if I switch over here, y'all should be able to see my sync cam, which has been kind of offline for the past couple of episodes, but we got it back up. What we're going to do is take our eggs, we're going to cover them with water just until they're covered. We don't need to add very much more water. You're actually just going to waste a little bit of time waiting for the rest of the water to boil if you overfill. So just cover your eggs. And if they're kind of floating up and just barely breaking the surface, that's fine. If you want to add just a little bit more water to make sure that they're totally covered, fine. Just don't totally fill your pot because it'll just take it longer to cook, longer to come up to a boil. No reason to do that. There we go. We'll switch back over here. I'm going to go ahead and get this up to the boil. And then while I'm waiting for that to come up to the boil, I'm actually going to go and grab my meat cutting board again. This is the one that we did our chicken on. And I'm going to grab my 4 strips of bacon. We're going to go ahead and get these guys kind of diced up so that we can do that when the time comes. Let's not put our bacon down on the cutting board. Set everything kind of aside. Now it's okay to cut the bacon up on this cutting board that the chicken's been on because we're going to be cooking it. So we're going to be killing any bacteria that's on the board that will be transferred to the bacon. So this is totally fine. But that is the reason I like to use 2 cutting boards because I can very quickly just kind of jump between the 2 of them if I need to. And I usually use the smaller cutting board for meat. It's easier to move around, easier to kind of set aside and not get other things covered in whatever it is that I'm butchering. And if I need to pull it back out, I can pull it back out real quick. By the way, those of you who may have noticed, I do have a new fridge. The fridge that I've been using for the past almost 8 years, up and died on me. So my home warranty person was nice enough to help me file a claim and get that kind of sorted out. So got a brand new fridge. So far, I literally just got it on Wednesday, got delivered, and so far I'm loving it. It's perfect. It's everything that I would want in a fridge. So very happy about that. As far as the bacon goes, we're going to go ahead and cut this into little cubes so that we can use it to kind of garnish our salad. It's one of the ingredients. I want about 1/4 inch squares. So like a 1/4 inch dice. So we're just going to go ahead and cut long ways first. And just very kind of carefully try and make these straight strips. If this is too long for you to cut, just cut it in half first and then cut it, you know, the length that you wanted or the width that you wanted. That'll be just fine. But I'm just going to go ahead and cut it long ways. And what I'm doing is actually using the knuckle of my fingers to kind of guide my knife. Once the knife goes into the bacon, it's in the bacon. It's in the bacon all the way up to here. Like this is where the knife blade is actually like just going in. So I'm actually keeping my fingers a little bit behind and then just using them to kind of guide the knife as I move it back. Keeping it, again, the knife blade is in the bacon up here where my thumb is. I'm keeping it about 1 inch behind, but it allows me to kind of guide and make sure that I'm not like moving the knife around. Now one last one here. And this may not be a full 1/4 inch, but that's fine. Just cut what we can. Perfect. So now what I'm going to do is take this, turn it 90 degrees. If you cut this in half already, that's fine. Just put the two halves together. You'll just have a nice little cut right here in the middle, and you should still be able to do this. Or, if you want, make it a double wide. Either way. And then what we're going to do is very similar. Kind of use our hand, use the flat of our knuckle to kind of guide the knife back in 1/4 inch chunks. If you're doing the double wide thing, it gets a little bit more tricky because you kind of have to hold the whole thing together. You'll notice that I've got one finger kind of up here. My ring finger is kind of holding the outer edge. Make sure that this ring finger does not stray forward because you'll notice that now my knife is actually over my nail, which is not what you want to cut down through. So just make sure that if you are kind of doing the double wide thing, you're making sure that all of your fingers are behind whatever knuckle you're using as your guide. I actually don't like doing that, so I'm just going to do this in two sections, like so. And doing it in 2 sections like this actually speeds me up because I'm not worried about my other fingers. We're just going to go ahead and dice these bad boys up. And they should be ready to go about once our water starts boiling. Now, the lid to whatever pot you're using for your eggs, make sure that it's nearby, because as soon as this starts boiling, we're going to cover it with the lid and take it off the heat. So keep an eye on that. And just make sure your lid is handy. And I know that this is going to look like a lot of bacon. When we actually kind of cook it to crisp it up, it's a lot of the fat's going to render out, and you're going to end up with probably almost half is what it's going to end up being. The amount that you get is going to be about half of what you think you're going to, about half the size of what you start with. My eggs are starting to boil. I'm going to give them just another little minute here while I finish cubing my bacon. And you'll notice I'm just taking my time. There's no rush in any of this, really. There we go. And the last little bit. Perfect. So I've got my bacon all nice and cut up, ready to go. My eggs are starting to boil. I'm going to set my knife aside. We're going to take the lid of our cap here, or our pot here. We're just going to cover this, turn it off, and this is going to sit over here for 12 minutes. Hey Siri, set a timer for 12 minutes.
12 minutes. Count it down.
I'm literally just setting it over there. Same with our bacon. Actually, you know what? We can actually cook our bacon right now. So grab a little pan, non-stick if you got one. I like a little small pan like this one. I'm going to take my bacon and just move it right into the pan while the pan is cold. That's fine. And what we're going to do is turn this up to like a medium, probably like a medium, in between medium, high. But you don't want it to be like rapid spitting once it starts kind of searing. You want it to be a nice gentle kind of sizzle. So we're going to monitor that while we move on to other things. And again, this looks like a ton of bacon in a small pan, but I guarantee you this is going to render down and not be so impressive once it's cooked. There we are. And now I can take this and move it and wash my knife. So let's go ahead and get this up to medium high to start. If you've got an induction, I like to start it around 350, and then I'll adjust based on how lively the bacon is being. Otherwise, just try and moderate it. Get to like a medium high, and just kind of slowly bring this up to a nice little sear, like a nice little sizzle. So let's go ahead and switch over to our sink cam again. I'm moving my cutting board over here. Not going to wash it yet, but I am going to wash my knife because I just finished cutting up a bunch of bacon, and everything else is going to be veggies. So I'm going to get a nice little quick rinse on my knife with some soap. Now all the hard part is done. Everything else is basically making the salad, which is kind of the fun and easy part. We're going to be making a more traditional salad. There's a bunch of different ways. I know in the ingredients list I said get 4 different kinds of lettuce. You can get by with just one. If all you want is Iceberg, or if all you want is Romaine, go for it. And I'll show you a couple of different things, because there's different kinds of endive that you can get. And I've made it with both types. It's delicious either way. So if you got one type and not the type that I'm going to be using, it's going to work just fine. Don't worry about it. I'm also going to kind of bring it down over here to my oven. We can take a look at the chicken in here. And we see we got it really high, so it's browning very well. And that's what we want. We want the chicken to get a nice brown skin in there. And once we get it to about, I don't know, let's say 20 minutes of cooking time, we'll come and take a look. We'll probably end up reducing the temperature down to about 375. So knife is clean. Back to the other cutting board. All right, and we've got our bacon over here starting to kind of sizzle. I'm just going to give it a quick little toss. Feel free to use a spatula if you want to just kind of stir it around and break it up. And the 350 seems a little bit high, so I'm actually going to drop it down to about 340. And we'll see what it's doing. Nice and kind of lively sizzle, but it's not spattering all over the place. We're not causing it to jump around in the pan. Drake, I have not heard that, actually, and all of the endive that I've seen in the stores is usually just out on the shelf. So that is definitely a good thing to keep in mind. I've never heard it, though, so maybe I'll do a little bit of research on that and kind of figure out if that's a thing or not. But probably wouldn't be a bad thing to keep in a brown paper bag. It's just going to keep, if that's the best way to do it, then it'll keep just as good as if you didn't have it in a brown paper bag. All right, now so we got kind of some stuff going, some stuff that's going to take a little bit of time to do going. We're going to go ahead. I'm going to pop open a beer. I'm drinking a Dogfish Head 60-minute IPA. We've been getting some really nice warm weather here in California lately. And in my opinion, an IPA is a great way to kind of cool yourself down. So is a salad. And that's kind of why we're doing the Cobb Salad this week. You'll notice that when you're pan frying these bacon bits, you're going to get a lot of rendered fat. So just keep that in mind. It's totally fine. We are going to drain this later. But that's kind of why you start with this huge pile, and then you end up with like half the size, because most of that fat renders out. Thanks, Etienne. This is a good one. And super widely available. And I can continue to cook while drinking it. Whereas if I'm drinking like a 120-minute, that's potentially a different story. That is good. Let our bacon go. Hey Siri, how much time is left on the timer?
About 6 minutes.
All right, so about halfway done with our eggs, which is fine. So speaking of our eggs, I'm actually going to take a bowl. I'm going to fill it up with some ice, and we're going to fill it up with enough water to cover our eggs again. We're going to move our eggs once they're done, into the ice bath and just leave them there until we're ready to kind of peel them. So just keep that in mind. And apologies for the noise. And we'll go ahead and fill this up with some cool water. And again, you don't need a ton of water in here. Just enough to cover the eggs. Otherwise, the ice is actually just going to melt for no reason to keep the larger body of water cold. So I like to just kind of start with about an inch and a half of water, and then as much ice as I need to cover that. Use a wooden spoon here to break up some of my bacon. It is starting to spit at me, so I'm going to turn this down to about 325. And the only reason that oil spits is because there's actually moisture, water, that gets released into there, and then it pops. It basically flash vaporizes, and that's what all the spitting is. So you can counteract that either with a cover or just by turning down the heat, and then you'll be basically causing it to evaporate slower than if you're using a hotter heat. And sometimes there's just not really much you can do other than let it hiss and pop at you. All right, let's switch back to our food, and we'll get started with some of our veggies. So here's what I like to start with. I'd like to start with my tomatoes. I've got about a cup of cherry tomatoes here. You can use a regular full tomato. That's totally fine. No one's gonna come and tell you that you're wrong. But cherry tomatoes tend to be a little bit sweeter, and they tend to have a little bit more flavor than just like a regular tomato. It's also super easy to get these guys cut up. All I like to do is kind of cut them at like a 45-degree angle, just like so. And then that's all I do for my tomatoes. I just come through all of them, 45-degree angle, and then just kind of get them separated. Yikes! Keeping an eye on my bacon as well to make sure I don't burn it. You'll also notice that if you are getting some of those pops, it usually pops for a while and then stops. Oh, my bacon is going crazy. Which the dog is happy about because a lot of the bacon is actually popping up out of the pan and onto the floor. So he's getting some salty treats. And that just means I'm going to have to do a little bit of mopping when I'm done here. I'm going to go ahead and turn this down to medium, which is 275. I just want to make sure that it keeps sizzling. If it stops sizzling, it means that they're no longer browning. I'll go ahead and continue to chop our cherry tomatoes. And you should have a nice little pile of them on your cutting board or on a plate if you're setting things aside. And as far as my bacon goes, I think that looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do is turn off the heat, grab another small little plate. Actually, I'm going to grab a small little bowl. We're just going to put a couple of paper towels on the bottom. And I'm going to pour my bacon into here. And the towels will absorb the oil and allow for easier discarding. And we're just going to kind of set this aside for now until we're ready to use it. Tomatoes are done. I'm also going to use an avocado. There's a couple of different ways you can cut this avocado up. Get rid of our little sticker here. You can cut this up in nice long slices, which is what I tend to prefer to do. You can also chunk it up into cubes. Really up to you, and really the method of doing it is pretty much the same. I'm going to take my avocado, cut right down into the middle until I hit the stone or the seed. Then I'm just going to kind of roll it along on the board around the knife, like so. I'm going to peel it, or I should say twist it, and that's a real quick way to slice your avocado in half. Set it down, knife right down into the seed, and then twist again. Seed comes right out, and then you can actually use your fingers here to kind of pinch the other way, and the seed pops right off into the garbage or into a compost heap, or wouldn't compost it because you'll probably end up with an avocado tree. But, you know, that's how you get the avocado off the knife without cutting yourself. Now what I'm going to do is actually cut these into quarters. So I'm just going to cut the flesh side right down the middle. Hey Siri, stop the timer. And that's our eggs being done. So what I'm going to do is grab my eggs, or the pan that they're in, I should say, the pot that they're in. We'll remove the lid real quick. Fish these guys out directly into the ice bath. Now what this is going to do is stop the cooking and get them cool enough to handle. And it's a nice little trick because the white actually kind of contracts and separates from the shell, making it much easier to get the shell off of the egg. And then that pan I'm going to move over. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at our chicken. I'll let that go for just another 5 or 10 minutes. It's getting nice and golden brown, but I really want a nice crispy, awesome looking skin. So these avocado pieces, the reason that we cut them into quarters, if you have a half of an avocado and you try to peel off the skin, it takes a lot of work. It's kind of a pain because this is, I've gone over this a couple of times in some other cook-alongs. This is an arch shape, and the arch is one of the hardest shapes to actually invert or cause to kind of fall apart. So by cutting it into a quarter, now we don't have the full arch anymore. It actually bends much, much easier, and you can just kind of peel the skin off of your avocado like so. Then I'm just going to set that down. I'm going to do that with all 4 of my avocado quarters. If you have a particularly ripe avocado, this can get messy. So another option is to just use a spoon to kind of scoop the avocado out. I like using this method if I can, just because it lets me kind of cut the avocado into chunks or into slices a little bit easier. Let's go ahead and just finish doing this. And there we go. So now I've got a full avocado, and I can go ahead and take this and either cut it into nice little slices like so. Or if I want to chunk it up, it's as easy as just making like 2 or 3 cuts, turning it, making some more cuts, and you've got your avocado chunks. I tend to prefer slices. I don't know why. I like them better. But it's your salad, so you do what you want to do. And of course, the round ends are for the chef. There we go. We'll just do the same thing with this bad boy. Got some nice long avocado slices there for our salad. And what else do we need? Let's see. Let's go check our chicken real quick. I'll show you what this guy looks like now. Had him in here for 25 minutes. We've got a beautiful golden brown chicken in there. The skin is really nice. Let's see if I can pop that open and show you. Should be nice and crispy. And what I'm going to do now is take my temperature, turn it down to 375. And what that's going to do is keep the chicken cooking, but keep the skin from overcooking or getting like too burned. So that should be good. It's got another 24 minutes on the chicken, and we are going to continue over here. So the last thing I like to add to my salad that's a little bit different than kind of traditional, I love red onion. And so I'm going to add a couple of slices of red onion. If you want a traditional, do not use red onion. But I like it. So I'm just going to go ahead and take off this kind of papery little knob at the top, put the onion flat, cut it in half, like so. And then I'm just going to peel off this outer layer of papery skin. The quickest way to kind of get the skin off of an onion. And sometimes even this doesn't go that quickly. Sometimes you have to go down 2 layers. Because you want something nice and meaty to kind of peel back and bring the skin off with it. There we are. Now for this, I'm just going to do some really nice, thin red onion. I'm going to say this is like a 32nd of an inch. Like it's very, very thin. And this is a potent onion because I'm starting to tear up. There we go. That should be good. Set my onion over to the side again. Get that kind of bunched up. Now we can move on to our lettuce. So again, I'm going to be using 4 different kinds of lettuce. I've got Endive lettuce, I've got Romaine, I've got Iceberg lettuce, and I've got Watercress. So those 4 types are kind of the traditional lettuces that you're going to use in a Cobb salad. If you only want to use one, there's nothing stopping you from only using Romaine or only using Watercress. It's totally up to you, whatever you enjoy in your salad. But I happen to be able to find all 4 of them, so that's what I'm going to be doing. And I actually found 5 of them. I'm just going to set all these guys over here for now. Because there's 2 different kinds of endive that you can get here. Probably more than that in other parts of the world. And they look totally different. So, the first type that you can get are these little itty-bitty endives. And they're called Belgian endives. And I'll switch back over here so you can kind of see it from the top. It's a little itty-bitty mini lettuce almost. And it's very narrow, very, very fun to kind of peel. And if you want to use these, they taste amazing in this salad. You basically just want to take off about 1 inch off the bottom. And then they just kind of fall apart. Each individual leaf just kind of peels out. So this is definitely one type of endive that you can use. Give these a taste, though. Usually the top part of the leaf is nice and sweet, and then the lower part tends to get a little bit bitter. So if you're going to use this kind of endive, just make sure you enjoy the flavor before adding them to your salad. And these are good. And then the other thing, take a look at kind of the outer leaves, and if you have any that are bruised or don't really look that great, maybe they've got a little bit of, kind of that wilting situation going on, something like this where it's like a damaged leaf, doesn't look all that appetizing, remove them. Just use the leaves that look good. But definitely take these guys and kind of break them apart before you wash them. That way you're making sure you're washing all of the individual leaves. And then once you get in there enough, it's actually going to be small enough. Hey, stop it. That you're not going to be able to kind of peel it apart anymore. And so you can just kind of eat this last little bit yourself. Kind of snap it off and, oh, another little chef's treat. So this is one type of endive that you can use. The other type of endive actually looks a lot like frisee lettuce. Really? That is awesome to know, Drake. Thank you for bringing it up here on the cook-along. So I'm sure all of y'all can see what Drake is saying, that the light will actually make these guys more bitter. So storing them in a paper bag is probably the best way to do it. Thank you for bringing that up. And that would explain why this one here is actually a lot sweeter than the one I had a couple days ago when I made my test batch. But this is the other kind of endive lettuce that you can get. And it's very big and very bushy. Looks a little bit like frisee lettuce. Again, you're going to see some that kind of have some blemishes, some kind of bruised areas. So you can take those off and either discard or just use the good part of the leaf. Like up here, that's all fine. But I'm going to go around this bruised part and just kind of tear off some of these other pieces of leaf. And then we'll just get rid of that guy. And we'll just kind of peel those guys off and put them aside. And then I'm just going to go, I'm going to use both because I got both, so no reason not to. Now you can cut lettuce, but if you've ever taken like a head of romaine and cut through it, you'll notice that you get that white milky kind of excretion as basically wherever you cut it. I've noticed, and I've actually read, that if you tear lettuce leaves off, they won't bleed like that, whereas if you cut them, they will. So I have started just cutting, I've started just kind of tearing all of my leaves apart for my salads, just to kind of prevent that. And it's, as far as I can tell, accurate. That if you kind of tear your lettuce leaves, you don't get any of that bleeding. And then again, you know, take an endive leaf, give it a taste, just make sure you enjoy it before you put it into your salad. And that is tasty. Go ahead and set this aside. So here are my endives. Two different kinds. And I got some red onion mixed in there. Move that over to the side. I'm going to actually take these leaves here, the little Belgian ones, and kind of break them in half. Because I don't necessarily want a giant spear of lettuce looking me in the face. And one of the small ones like that, that's fine, but these larger ones, just going to kind of break them up in half, in thirds, whatever you think is a good size for your fork. There we go. So that's a pretty good amount of those two. I've got three more different kinds of lettuce to add here. Let's go with our watercress next. Let's set these guys over to the side. Now, watercress is also a very kind of tasty little leaf, but it's a lot more like spinach, and it's almost like little itty-bitty spinach leaves that kind of fan out on this branch. So what we want to do is just kind of, again, just pick off the leaves. Don't worry about tearing them because they're all fairly small. Even the bigger ones, you're not going to find giant leaves of watercress, or at least I can't find any giant leaves of watercress here when I'm looking around. And I'm just going to kind of pop a couple of these leaves off, mix them in. I'm not going to worry too much. Just going to make sure that if I see any that are kind of like super wilted or, you know, really kind of gross looking, we won't use those. But as far as the rest of these, just going to go ahead and peel them off and toss them into the pile. Now, I'm not putting these into a bowl yet because we are going to rinse these. I've got a little salad spinner. If you don't have a salad spinner, you can just use a colander. But I think a salad spinner is a great way, especially if you eat a lot of salad, to kind of clean off your leaves, get all of the little dirt and grit off of them, and dry them. There we go. So we got these kind of three different leaves. A pile of all of them. And that's about what my salad spinner will take in one load because I have a smaller one. So that is what I'm going to do. And then we'll get to our romaine and our iceberg lettuce next. So you go there. Grab my spinner here. Got 15 minutes left on the chicken. Get all of these guys into the spinner. And so the cool thing about this is you basically just run it under the sink, out of the bowl in the little colander that comes with it. Just run it under some water, mix up all the leaves, make sure you get them all nice and kind of rinsed off. This will take off any grit, any dirt, any little insects that are on there. And then what we're going to do is put it into the actual bowl. And then it's got a mechanism that spins this little colander around and pulls off all the moisture and anything else that's kind of left on the leaves. Cleans them off really, really well. And almost more importantly, dries them off really, really well. So here we go. We got a nice wet little basket of leaves. Just put it into the little bowl. Take the lid, put it on, remove the little thing, and then we just press on that a couple of times. And then that spins the little colander around, and you'll notice that we got that water down at the bottom. Or if I move this off, you'll see that we've got our now dry leaves, clean and dry leaves. We've got all of our water here that has any extra silt or little bugs, if you got any, that we can just kind of dump out. Now I'm going to take this clean lettuce and toss it into the bowl. And the rest of the spinner I'm just going to bring back over because we're going to be doing romaine next. Romaine and iceberg. Go ahead and switch back over here. So there's the first part of our salad, watercress, 2 different kinds of endive. Hey, Caspero, what's up, man? Good to see you. Doggo, you're not getting any iceberg lettuce. Sorry. Speaking of iceberg, I've got a half a head of iceberg lettuce here. And what I like to do is actually just kind of core it. So I'm actually going to take my knife at a 45-degree angle, cut in. Same thing on the other side, like so. And then you're just taking out kind of the root. And what this lets you do, you can just kind of peel this apart now, and you can get into the individual leaves very, very quickly. So here we go. We got 1, 2, several different kinds of leaves in here. You're all good, dude. I see you on Instagram, and I'm sure you catch up when you got time, so no worries. And they're not live because I want you necessarily to be here. They're live just because it's fun, and I love talking with all you. So when you can make it, it's great to have you, but don't feel like it's an obligation. That's definitely not the point. So the same thing with these lettuce leaves. I'm just going to be kind of tearing them apart. Iceberg is pretty clean. I just kind of keep an eye on it, make sure that there's nothing floating around that I wouldn't want in my salad, but very, very rarely do I see an iceberg that's got a ton of stuff, especially once you take off the outer leaves. I'm just going to go ahead and rip and tear. Hope things have been well with you, dude. You're hopefully the busyness is good busy and not bad busy. There's definitely a difference here. And then I'm just going to check these guys for anything outside and just tear it all apart. This also gives you a nice bit of variability with the leaves that you're eating. When you cut things, it's almost too uniform. Makes things look less interesting. This way, you got a lot of little bits, a lot of big bits, all kinds of stuff. Give this a nice little toss. Now we're going to grab a head of romaine, do the same thing, except that the romaine I am definitely going to salad spin because it's almost always dirty. And here we go. Just kind of peel these outer leaves off. And you may not be using a whole head. It's really up to you. If you want to just kind of do like a half a head like that, maybe set this aside. We'll kind of get these guys broken up into the salad spinner. And we'll see if it equals about what we've already got. And the only piece of this that I would probably cut is just the bottommost part of each leaf. And then this one here has got a little bit of a bad spot, so we'll get rid of that. But down about an inch off the bottom, we'll just get rid of all of that. And you'll notice that we're getting kind of that milky bleeding down here where we cut. And then as we're tearing through this, you'll notice that we're not going to have any of that where we tear it. Really kind of an interesting thing. You would think that the more damage you do when you tear it, you know, you're actually going to get more kind of bleeding, but that's not the case. So I'm just going to go ahead and tear my romaine up into the salad spinner. Yeah, absolutely. Corporate is less than ideal. But hopefully things are going good for you there. It's always better when, you know, corporate sucks, all of that jazz, but hey, I'm succeeding, so it's worth it, you know, versus I'm always getting in trouble at work or blah, blah, blah. You know, just the mindset changes. Do the same thing, get rid of those guys, just kind of tear these up. So we used about 3/4 of our romaine. Which is great. There we go. Go ahead and salad spin this again real quick. And our salad base is basically done. We can start working on our dressing. We got 7 minutes and 15 seconds left on our chicken. So really kind of all of the stuff that we've been doing to build the salad has taken up the roasting time for the chicken, which is exactly what you want to do. Multitask without multitasking. Get all of that. Get some of the initial water off. This rolling, rolling, rolling. And lovely, clean, dry romaine and water. And I'm just going to set this here to dry. We'll put this into our bowl with all the rest of our salads, lettuces. There we go. Perfect. Now the great thing about having this much lettuce is you can kind of build your salad however you want, and you can keep a good portion of this mix as dry leaves for another salad the next day, as opposed to adding dressing to it and, you know, kind of wilting it down. So this is kind of the salad that keeps on giving, and you could do this for any kind of salad that you want to do, honestly. But this is a great way to make your own lettuce mix without having to worry so much about grabbing those boxes that always tend to get kind of gross from the store. Here we go. Nice little bowl of mixed greens. All right. Let me get this out of the way real quick. Got 5 minutes left on our chicken. So let's go ahead and got our salad ready. We got kind of all of our toppings here. We've got our eggs. Let's take our eggs and get these guys peeled. So just grab one. And really one egg for one salad. So if you're just eating one salad yourself tonight, just grab one egg. We're going to go ahead and just kind of crack it down on the cutting board. I like to just break all sides, rotate it and break it down. I generally go to the fat side of the egg because that usually has a little air pocket that you can kind of start peeling from. And you should notice, as long as you get under that kind of membrane there, the shell should come right off. Oop, got a little bit of sticky there. And of course on the tester one, everything worked perfectly. And now that I'm live, I'm getting some sticky. Can't be helped. It's just what happens when you turn a camera on. That's okay, because once we cut this up, no one will notice. There we are. Nicely peeled egg. We're just going to go ahead and dip this into our ice water again, just to get any little pieces of shell off that we're sticking on, clinging on. Well, Caspero, I don't know if you were here a little bit earlier, but I got a new fridge. My other one broke. My home warranty rep was awesome and helped me through the process with that. Apart from that, just working towards my instrument rating as far as aviation goes, and trying to come up with some fun new recipes for our Cook Along Live. Cobb salad is one of my favorite salads, mostly because of the blue cheese, I'm not going to lie. And then I'm just going to cut through it with my knife, and I've got a nice little egg here that we will put on our salad along with everything else once the time comes. There we go. And last but not least, we mentioned the blue cheese, but we don't have it out here yet. So I'm going to grab my blue cheese. I usually put this in the freezer if I'm gonna crumble it up myself. If you have crumbles that you already got, like maybe you got the cheese already crumbled, that's fine. I like to actually buy the blocks and shred them myself. Doesn't make it taste any different, but you can actually get higher quality cheese. So in this case, I'm using Point Reyes Blue, which is really, really good cheese. And just use a normal cheese grater or microplane, and you can kind of control how big your cheese crumbles are for whatever it is that you're putting it into. Now, if you do this with it in the fridge, your hand temperature will actually warm the cheese up really quickly, and you'll end up with kind of globs of cheese. But if you freeze it, you can get really nice, fine shards. And if you were watching our episode where we made a wedge salad, that's the way to put the blue cheese into the blue cheese dressing for that. Yeah, that other fridge. Just woke up one morning, had a giant puddle in my kitchen, and rushed to grab towels and everything to mop all that up. Thought it was the compressor, actually. But when I called the service person out, he took a look at the fridge and said, "Hey, you know what? This particular model, those were all lemons, so we'll just get you a new fridge." And that's what they ended up doing. So not a bad deal. And I really do like my blue cheese, so you'll notice that I've got a giant pile going on here. If you don't like blue cheese as much, don't use as much. And I actually won't need this second block. I'll put it right back in the freezer. I'm going to be making some of that homemade blue cheese dressing later tonight once I'm done with the stream. There we go. Last little bit. Of course, it's kind of a little chef treat. Set this over on the side for now. Get this back in the freezer. And now, all we're waiting for is the chicken, which just finished. Perfect timing. So, what do I want to do with the chicken? Let me grab this. Move this out of the way. And this chicken looks perfect. Let's do this. We'll switch over here. I'll show you all what the chicken looks like. Pretty much perfectly roasted. Just going to use our kitchen towel here to pull this bad boy out. And look at how amazing our chicken looks. Smells great as well because we have the garlic underneath the chicken. I'll go ahead and put this bad boy over here. We'll switch back to a different camera. And just do that. Actually, let's. So you guys can see the chicken over here on our tray. This camera actually does not do it justice because it's a lot more golden than what it's showing. Trying to get some white balance going. That's closer to what it looks like. It's a really, really good, nice golden brown. I've got a bunch of stuff here on my cutting board, and I do want to kind of let this chicken rest for just a bit. So what I'm going to do, move some of my cheese over. We've got all of the necessary components to build our salad. We just need to build the salad. So while I wait for that chicken to cool down, what I'm going to do is grab a serving bowl. I'm going to start putting in my lettuce mix. Just going to grab a handful down onto the bottom, switch over to this camera so you guys can see it. Just make sure it's a good mix. If you grab any giant leaves like this one, you got the time right now to break them down into smaller pieces so that they're not taking over the bowl. There we go. A couple more pieces in here. Got a little bit more of that endive in here. I'm going to be using about half of my lettuce here. There we go. Now before I continue with adding all of the different ingredients that we got here, what I want to do is actually dress the lettuce, dress the salad here. So let's make our dressing. I like a little kind of bell jar. This was actually a jam jar that I finished and then cleaned out. And we're going to go ahead and put in our olive oil. I like to use extra virgin. If you don't want the olive oil flavor, that's fine. You just use a regular olive oil. You'll get less of a olive flavor. We're going to add about 2/3 of a cup of olive oil. I'm going to use balsamic vinegar because I like balsamic vinaigrette. Traditionally, you would make a red wine vinaigrette, so you would use red wine vinegar here instead of balsamic. However, I prefer balsamic, so that's what I'm going to use. But it's the same kind of principle. 1/3 of whatever vinegar you're using, 2/3 of whatever olive oil or oil you want to use. So I'm going to add about 1/3 cup of balsamic. And you can always adjust this more. You can always add more of whatever vinegar you want. It's very hard to take it away. So err on the side of too little. And then if you need to add more, that's fine. It only takes a second. We're going to grate 1 garlic clove into this. Just going to give it a nice little kind of press to get the skin off. There we go. And then microplane grater, in my opinion, is the easiest way to chop up a garlic clove for dressing. My microplane is starting to get a little dull, so it might be time to go find a new one. I'll just use a back of a wooden spoon here. Get the garlic in. And then our last ingredient is actually going to be a little bit of Dijon mustard. Now this doesn't actually add all that much flavor to the dressing, but what it does is it works as an emulsifier to keep the dressing together so that it doesn't separate. You just need a teaspoon. You don't need very much. We'll go ahead and get that in there. Oops, that's not the right lid. And we're going to add about a teaspoon of salt. Yeah, man, the new fridge is awesome. I have not found anything that I don't like about it yet. So, very, very excited about it. I like to add a little bit more salt to this, just because you're coating quite a bit of salad. I'm going to add about a teaspoon of freshly cracked pepper. And then it's as simple as closing the lid and giving it a nice shake. And you'll notice that the dressing in here comes together very nicely. It's very hard to show you on this camera, but maybe if I go to this one, you guys can see that the dressing comes together very, very well. It's nice and thick, and it'll actually take it a while to separate. So this is perfect for what we're using it for. And I like to just kind of taste it. Yum. Perfect. Enough salt, enough pepper, enough everything. So what I'm going to do with this, take my teaspoon and dress my lettuce. 2 or 3 teaspoons. To start. And I'm just going to use my hand. Again, I'm going to use my left hand usually when I'm doing something like this. That way my main hand can stay clean if I need to grab anything. And then I'm just going to get all of this dressing mixed around in the lettuce. And that's kind of our base. Got a beautiful salad, beautiful bed of lettuce. And you'll notice the salad might even compact a little bit after you dress it, just because the dressing adds a little bit of weight. So you can actually add a few more leaves if you feel like you need to, and then just get those guys dressed as well. You don't usually need to add very much more dressing than three teaspoons, about a tablespoon, maybe a little bit more. And we're going to actually kind of add just a touch at the end, just drizzled over everything. But that's kind of how I like to start. Now, with everything else on the plate, we're just going to start kind of, or on the cutting board, I should say, we're just going to start putting them in here to try and make them look interesting. So in this case, I'm going to start with my tomatoes. I'm going to kind of set them on one side here. And we're just going to do something like so. Just make sure that we got enough facing up that it looks interesting. You don't want them all facing up, you don't want them all facing down. And if you can help it, try and kind of separate your tomatoes so that you don't have any ones that just look like a tomato. That makes sense. You don't want something like this going into your salad and then just like sitting there. That doesn't quite look as interesting. So kind of breaking them up like so. That looks fun. There we go. Now to the tomatoes, I'm going to add just a little bit of salt. Not much, just a bit. And what that's going to do is actually kind of draw out some of the moisture and draw out some of the tomato flavor. And it won't make your salad salty, guarantee it. It's going to make the tomatoes perfect. Next up, I'm actually going to go with my avocado. And I'm going to just grab a quarter to begin with. And just kind of fan it out. Lay that down up against the tomato, see how that looks. And I probably am just going to go with a whole avocado. I'll fan this second bit out. And what this will let me do is kind of fill that little void underneath and make the avocado look fun and interesting. It's all about making the food look good, right? So that's what we're trying to do here. There we go. Nice little avocado. Switch back to our camera here so you guys can see what I'm doing. Now you can add a little bit of salt to your avocado, but what I like to do is just kind of just a little bit of our vinaigrette over the avocado. And what this is going to do is it's actually going to kind of roll off. By the time we're done, it's going to be like a nice little glaze. And that's going to add the salt that we want, or the seasoning that we want to the avocado. So after that, I'm going to come over and grab my bacon, or some of my bacon. And I'm going to find a nice spot where it's not going to fall into the little crevices, because then you'll lose the bacon. I want to make sure that it's absolutely visible. And I always like putting the bacon right next to where I'm going to put the blue cheese. So if we put our bacon over here, our blue cheese is going to go right next to it. And you don't have to put these in piles like this. You can absolutely go and just sprinkle things, over the salad. This is just the way that I want to present mine. I'm going to go with my blue cheese next. Grab a nice little pile. Like I said, wherever the bacon is, blue cheese is going to go right next to it. I love blue cheese, so I'm probably going to go a little bit overboard on how much I add to my salad. The amount that you add is going to be up to you. There we go. You'll notice that I'm keeping the center kind of clear, and that's where I'm going to put my eggs. So I want to kind of keep that open for the egg to kind of fit in there. Now I've got red onion. Up to you if you want to add this or not. I'm going to go ahead and set that in next. And now that I've cleared off my cutting board, I'll set my salad over to the side for the time being. Kind of clean off my knife because it's got some blue cheese on it. And I'm going to grab my chicken, which has had a little bit of time to rest. Move this to the cutting board. I'm just going to find where the center is. Basically, it's going to be where the breastbone is. I'm going to cut right down along the breastbone, all the way down. And you might feel the wishbone going off to the side. You can actually cut right through the wishbone. Makes it a little bit easier to kind of peel the breast off. Now I'm going to switch this around this way and cut the breast meat off. Just ever so slightly. If you're using any other kind of meat, you can just cut it up and do what you're going to do with it. And here's my breastbone, wishbone. Come here, buddy. Here we are. Cut down. And you could probably let the chicken rest a little bit longer, so it's not ripping hot like mine is. And then you can separate the breast from the body. So, got some nice crispy skin, nice moist breast. I'm going to go ahead and cut off the end, set it aside. Now I want about 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch slices, and I'm just going to cut right down the chicken like so. You should be able to get 3 on the bottom and kind of 3 on the top. We'll just do that. And the chicken, I'm going to add kind of like so. Right there. And last but not least, our hard-boiled egg right in the middle. And there we go. Our Cobb salad is that camera. That camera. Cobb salad is done. No blue cheese dressing. We've got a balsamic vinaigrette, Dad, and the blue cheese serves as kind of the crumbles for that balsamic vinaigrette. So I'm gonna go ahead and take my pan off to the side. Got the rest of my Cobb salad here. We've got our egg in the middle, tomatoes, bacon, avocado, red onion, chicken breast over here, blue cheese crumbles. And this is a delicious way to enjoy a yummy salad on a summer afternoon. So hopefully you guys can take some time to do this as well. I know that Allison and Drake, you guys are cooking along. I'm curious how yours came out. But this looks delicious, and I am going to do that. Grab a fork and a knife and dive right in to the egg. A little bit of bacon and a tomato. Oh yeah, that's good. Delicious salad. Delicious salad. All right, everybody. That brings us to the end of another Cook Along Live. Hopefully you all enjoy your Cobb salad. Next week, I'm not sure what we're going to be making yet, but be sure to follow me on Instagram because you'll get all the ingredients for next week's recipe, plus find out what we're actually making. And I've got enough lettuce and little fixins here. I'm going to be eating salad for at least a couple of days. So hopefully you guys have a wonderful afternoon, wonderful Sunday. Enjoy your week. We're coming up on Memorial Day in May, as far as I understand it. And hopefully your April will treat you well. Happy spring. And we'll see you on the next Cook Along Live. Have a wonderful afternoon. Bye, everybody.